September the 11th was a day that forced America to take a look at itself in the mirror. It was literally an urban volcanic eruption. All of us can remember those horrible pictures of people jumping from buildings and running down the streets of New York, trying to escape the tower's pyroclastic flow. The disbelief we all felt as we looked into the eyes of our fellow citizens running for their lives in real time on television was life-altering. The endless barrage of disinformation by some borders on criminality, and the reckless actions of a few have led many to believe conspiracy theories that have no basis in fact. To dishonor those brave people who ran to the aid of those in need is truly disturbing. For an instant, we were all united as a nation, and we came to the aid with no preconditions. It's years later, and many still suffer from the attack on the World Trade Center. Getting help from government sources to study the effects of ground zero air quality has proven to be a disappointing experience. The health of many rescue and construction workers has deteriorated throughout the years and has been devastating to them and their families. We must come together again and put aside this false propaganda and ostracize the ones that don't, for the sake of America's future.
I had been in Hartford, Connecticut, doing a demolition project down there, when I got a call from Jim Santoro, who worked for Tully Construction, asking me to go to the trade centers. I had to go to tell my wife that I had to leave again after being gone for 4 months. And she said, you gotta go because you're just gonna be miserable if you don't. My father had been a wrecker for his entire life, and I stayed in electronics for a couple of years after I got out of high school and went into the business with him doing demolition work. So I'd been doing it pretty much since I was in my very early 20s.
Kirk Arsenault has been a demolition expert for over 20 years. He was summoned to Ground Zero in early October to help in the cleanup efforts. Kirk worked on such projects as the Gettysburg National Tower in Pennsylvania and the Hudson Building in Detroit, just to name a few. His experience brings credibility to his testimony with a detailed summary of what he experienced.
I've worked on the different projects around the country, implosion work and conventional work. I've done the prep work for the implosion of the Hudson Building, which was the largest implosion out in Detroit, Michigan. I was out there for about 7 months. It was a 9-month project. I was out there for about 7 of it, right till the end when we took the building down. I've done body retrievals out of silos and stuff, so I haven't, and I've done fire jobs where the steel has been very highly damaged in very close vicinity of buildings. I wasn't called in for search and rescue. I was called in afterwards for the actual demolition part of it to take the buildings down. We all got there. We had to go through multiple security checks to get in. Once we were inside the site and we checked in, I mean, I've worked on many buildings where there's been fire and collapses and everything else, but on a scale this large, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I was involved in the dismantling of Building 5, and I also removed parts of the tower out of the Bankers Trust Building at 130 Liberty across the street. When we got to the top of the building, there was a lot of debris in the top of the roof, the parts of the plane, shoes, clothing. Pretty eerie sight to see. The building itself had a lot of stress fractures in it, had a lot of cracks, so we had to be very careful as how we cut it to ensure that it wouldn't hurt the people that were working in the building or around the building. At that point, we was working with Manafort Brothers, who was a subcontractor of Tully's. We were brought in to do the burning work to weaken the building enough for them to be able to ball the building to the ground. We were working 12-hour days down at the site, 7 days a week, putting in a lot of time to get the Building 5 ready to take down with the ball. Had 3 guys down there with me, Steve Smith, Steve Zablocki, and Matt Peterson, who worked with us. The vault that was in Building 5 had been, a bunch of stuff had been collapsed on top of it, and they shored up all around it, and when they opened it, the stuff that was in there had been heated to such temperatures, money, pictures, anything that was flammable. It was like an easy bake oven. As soon as you touched everything, it turned to dust.
Many think what has circulated as fact about the towers being a controlled demolition also claim government complicity in some way. Unanswered questions about the mechanics of controlled demolition and the cause and effect are really brought into account. Building 7 went down 7 hours later without being struck by an aircraft, but fell in the same manner as World Trade Center 1 and 2. The theory that surrounds this question leads to many accusations and unsubstantiated rumors. Due to the documented testimony taken from certain individuals, the government's account of what happened that day they claim was false. They state that Building 7 was ordered to be pulled. The term pulled is one of many used in the demolition field for taking down a structure. We hope to clear up any misunderstandings or doubts by bringing forth an expert in the demolition field.
months and months and months of preparation as far as steel cutting, splice place cutting. You have to cut the steel down to 50% strength, which involves what's called putting box cuts inside the steel. You cut out pockets inside the I-beams where you actually place the explosives. And you'd have torches up there burning. There'd be a whole bunch of work going on. I mean, it wouldn't be an overnight process. And on building those size, each building would take approximately 9 months to a year. In the case of the towers, where there were large spans, they were open floor plans. So the beam, as far as support columns, there were not as many as you would see in a conventional building. Air has to escape at some point. It has to go somewhere. It's being forced out in front of it. It's an element that needs to be pushed. It's a gas, so it's like when you compress gas, it becomes denser. When it becomes denser, it needs to go somewhere. It needs to escape. The towers, you see the windows blowing out down before it. Air is being pushed in front of what's ever falling and needs to escape. It has to go somewhere. When I got down there, most of Building 7 had already been removed, but the parts of the tower that came across Building 6, I could see where all that was. It was heavy damage to Building 6 from the north tower that had gone across it, which would put debris straight across the street into the bottom of Building 7. You have a 110-story building which has massive amounts of material that's coming down and being pushed down. With a massive dust cloud, you couldn't see where the built steel was going until it actually settled later on. There was no way to see anything. Now, Building 7 had debris go into it. Didn't have a plane go into it. It had debris go into it and start fires. Burned for roughly 7 hours, enough to weaken the steel to where it couldn't take the stress. And when you take the feet out, you take the feet out of the bottom of the building, it's got nowhere to stand. It's going to come down. It fell as orderly as it showed on TV. And I mean, I've done implosion and it looked like an implosion. But I can tell you right now, it wasn't, just like I said, because I can see where the debris went into the building. I could see the amount of debris that was still on the street when I got there that was right in front of where Building 7 was.
Due to the statements made by EPA officials and many in the media, the construction workers were told it was safe to proceed despite the apparent dangers of the air quality. Without any orientation and due to the nature of the tragedy, safety precautions were overlooked in the rush to get in and help. It is estimated that as many as 50,000 rescue and construction workers have developed health problems that have prevented them from working, causing them not only to lose their salaries, but also their health insurance as well. Breathing all the contaminated air without the proper protection is a direct result of exposure from ground zero. Due to the statements made by EPA officials and many in the media, the construction workers were told it was safe to proceed despite the apparent dangers of the air quality. Without any orientation and due to the nature of the tragedy, safety precautions were overlooked in the rush to get in and help. It is estimated that as many as 50,000 rescue and construction workers have developed health problems that have prevented them from working, causing them not only to lose their salaries, but also their health insurance as well. Breathing all the contaminated air without the proper protection is a direct result of exposure from ground zero.
The EPA was making comments all over the airwaves that the air at ground zero was fine. So none of us had any big concerns. And as well as the media, air quality's fine. There's no problem with ground zero air, which proved later on to be a bad thing, because a lot of people are now sick. If you go into any plant or any major construction job, you sit down, you have a safety meeting first. You have what your requirements are. If you're required to wear respirators, what you would normally do is have a physical. You would have a physical, a breathing test, and a pulmonary test to find out if you were able to wear respirators. None of this was done there. They pretty much just said, "Here, let's get to work," which was kind of understandable because I had done it on a lot of other jobs where we had done that. This particular job, we didn't do that, but we were asked to just let's get in here, and you felt that too. You felt like you needed to just get in there and get to work and get something done. They sent down a bunch of masks to the site, which were paper masks. They were absolutely useless for what we were breathing down there. You had asbestos in the building, you had PCBs in the building, you had lead in the building, you had all these things. When they're turned into a gaseous form, you know, lead when it's turned into a gaseous form, you absorb it right into your lungs. The concrete was completely pulverized. It was a constant cloud above the whole site that would remain that way day in and day out, and there was a smell that just was, I'll never forget. The smell was just a horrible smell. It was a mixture, a combination of everything burning. There was still fires burning there well into December. Every time they would pick up a scoop of debris, it would bring fresh smoke out. The steel, half of the steel had, the smallest steel it had, was melting. I mean, he'd pull up, I saw the excavator pulling up actual liquid metal. It happened pretty much right away that you just didn't feel right. You know, I can't really say right away, but within the first couple of weeks, you just didn't feel right. I was sick when I left Ground Zero. I had been sick since we got there. The air quality had done something to us because we all felt like we had a cold. The day that we left, which was roughly about December 15th, they came in there in full hazmat suits when we were walking out the door. About 3 months after I left Ground Zero, I was taken to a Virginia hospital out in Hopewell, Virginia. I had upper respiratory failure. I was choking to death. I had epiglottitis and a few other things that were blocking my airways. I was not able to breathe. It was lucky that I got to the hospital. What I did, they were able to save my life, because if not, within 48 hours, they said I would have been dead. Now I've been going to the Mount Sinai program, and now I've found out I have nodules in my lung. I've got crippling arthritis. I mean, I wake up days, I feel like I'm 100 years old. Can't move. And I've been a very active person my whole life as far as physical work, and have never had a problem with it. In the past 5 years since, 6 years since Ground Zero, was that almost, not even 6 years yet, my health has declined. Unbelievable. I was out of work for over 2 years with headaches that would be just mind-boggling headaches every single day. I'm working with Local 1421 out of Boston, which is the Building Workers Union. We're working on a program to train first responders in the construction industry and the environmental industry also. Because a lot of times, firemen, police, EMTs are all trained to do this, where the general construction laborer is not trained. He's trained specific on a job beforehand, but in an emergency situation, you can't take the time to train a guy beforehand. You need to have him pre-trained and pre-qualified to go onto these sites.
That day, I had so much to do. Nothing short of this world stops turning would keep me from you. In a moment, it all slipped away. Life was going to change that day. Will I ever see you again? My brave, my loyal, my friend. Today was the day I thought about others and put myself on the shelf. I reached out to lend a hand, forget what I'm about. It's time times like these that show us who we are. The call for bravery travels far. Will I ever see you again? My brave, my loyal, my friend. Such despair only keeps me going. To see those eyes that could have been mine fills me with devotion. I will give my life and do what is right to protect what we hold. The challenge is left